Hello, everybody. This is Jim from Conversa. Glad you could join us today for this webinar with Dan McGaugh, talking a bit about the ultimate growth stack. This is a webinar I'm looking forward to. I know as I look through the materials a bit, this is a topic that it's on my mind every day. So very eager to see that happening. I know here this time of year, all of us are probably wishing that summer would come on, but still we've got to get our job done. We want to know how to do our marketing better. And this is going to be a chance for us today to take a look at some of the tools we use and how we use them, maybe some better practices that we can consider, some changes we want to make so that we can do a better job of keeping track of what's going on and understanding why it's happening the way that it is and know what we need to change. But with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Dan McGaugh from Effin Amazing. He's got a great message for us. And with that, Dan, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Definitely just want to kind of get a little bit, make sure that everybody's able to hear me and things like that. We do have the question box in there. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in there. I will be also polling during the webinar, so I'd love to see some responses in there. But let's just get started because we got a lot to cover. We're going to go through this really fast. There will be a recording sent out, so please don't be afraid to just kind of pay attention because we will send the recording out. We're going to cover a lot of information, so definitely just kind of pay attention to all the stuff that's going on. So just to kind of kick this out, I want to make sure that you understand who I am. My name is Dan McGaugh. I'm the CEO founder at Effin Amazing. Effin Amazing is a marketing operations and analytics consulting company. So basically what we do is we help a lot of companies get data driven by picking out what tools they're going to use to do all their measurements, helping them decide on their KPIs. But we also do a lot of the integration of the tools that go on their stack. So for an example, setting up marketing automation tools, setting up inbound marketing tools, setting up all kinds of stuff. So the stack is really where a lot of our effort is. So we do know a lot about that. So if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But today we're going to be talking about the ultimate growth stack, which is really exciting. I mean, I think stack is one of the hottest things right now. Everybody's trying to figure out how to get their marketing in check. So it's a really, really good talk to be able to help everybody on this call be able to get some things done. Now, what I want to start out with is I think right now we're kind of in the beginning of what I would call as a stack apocalypse, right? Now, you might be asking, like, what is a stack apocalypse, right? An apocalypse is basically when everything blows up and ends. And that's kind of in the state that we're at right now, in my opinion, right? There's marketing tools, there's sales tools, there's developer tools, and there's even support tools out there. And there's just so many tools that are coming onto the market at such a fast rate. Not all of them are going to be able to survive. Now, if we think about just the marketing stack world, it's grown crazy amounts over the past few years. Back in 2011, there was a study done which said there was just over 150 different marketing tools. However, just the next year or just 2 years later, over 350 different marketing tools were out on the market. A year after that, over 1,000 tools on the market. We're looking at nearly a 300% gain in just 1 year. I mean, that's mind-boggling how fast these tech companies are coming out. Continue on, 2015, there's over 2,000. 2016, there's over 3,500. And now we just completed 2017, and they're saying there's going to be over 6,000 different tools. I mean, literally, there is so many tools coming on the market that they're all able to stay alive because each one of them is buying each other's services to continue marketing their tools to each other. Right? So these companies eventually are going to run out of room, and there's not going to be enough businesses to keep them around. And that's one of the reasons why we started looking at and taking serious decisions around what tools do we choose, because we've had multiple tools in our stack. Basically, the businesses just went poof, and we had to reconfigure the entire stack and work around it because those businesses went under. So we want to make sure that some of the tools we use are not a part of that next stack apocalypse that we talk about. And we want to make sure that we use tools which will be around for the long haul. Now, changing anything in your stack is scary, right? Like, these things bring on nightmares. My job is to come into an organization and basically build out their stack and build out the different tools. But even moving one piece of tool out of the stack scares the crap out of me because there's all kinds of data loss. You could delete things. You could lose information about customers. So it really does take a serious decision to move something out of my stack. Now, just as a quick question here, I'd love to know how many tools are in your stack. If you have access to the question thing, just drop the number in there, and what we'll be able to do is track that. But a lot of people are surprised by how many tools they actually have in their stack. Even a lot of people don't even know how many tools they have, and most times when they guess, they're actually wrong about that number of tools. Now, I can see a lot of us are probably in the range of about 11 to 20 tools, which is really, really good to see. But I have to pose the question, what is in my stack, right? A lot of questions wonder, as the guy that is like the king of tools, how many tools am I using? Now, if I looked at my personal stack and talked about just what I use on nearly a daily basis, I would have 29 different tools that I use for sure. Now, these go everywhere from Gmail to social automation tools to Autopilot, which is my marketing automation tool, or even Salesforce, which I use for my CRM. Now, I use Wistia all the time for video streaming. So there's a lot of different tools that we use when we think about how our stack works. Now, what's the big problem in Stack right now? Now, most organizations have a silo between sales and marketing. Marketing has their marketing analytics tool like Google Analytics, maybe Amplitude or Kissmetrics. Sales is simply using Salesforce and nothing else. However, those two things typically aren't well connected. I mean, marketing gets a lead, they throw it over the fence, sales eats it, sales says this isn't a good enough lead, throws it back. But usually there's really not a lot of cross-pollination between the data that each of these organizations are getting. And I think that's a really big problem in our industry that needs to be solved. Now let's talk a little bit about the ultimate growth stack, right? We basically think that you need to choose tools based upon their integration, because this is what's critical for growth. You need to be able to pass data from one place to the next without having to do exports of CSVs and import of CSVs or JSONs or ETLs or any of those complicated things. The tools should just naturally be connected. Now, this is our ultimate stack. I'm going to go over this really, really quick from left to right to help you understand the diagram. Basically, Google Tag Manager is the beginning of what we would call our data pipeline. And you'll notice that that moves along the road and it goes right and then it goes into segment. That data flows into Clearbit. We'll notice that the data can actually pass from Clearbit back into segment, which we'll talk more about later. And then as well as the data goes from Clearbit then into Autopilot. Autopilot as well has the power to send the data back and is integrated into the segment. So there's a closed loop of data here, making sure that we know the entire story of what's going on. Now, as we continue down our data pipeline, you'll notice that Autopilot, which is our marketing automation tool, once again is integrated with Salesforce. And Salesforce has a complete full circle integration with Autopilot, which enables us to have all of the Salesforce data also piped over to Segment, which then shoves it down the rest of our data pipeline. Now, obviously, we're on a Conversa webinar right now. One of the reasons why we were able to do this is because we love the Conversa tool. We're able to use all of that call tracking material to actually pump into our Salesforce instance and actually have better understanding of what is going on. And once again, that's able to pass back through the rest of our stack. Now, we'll notice at the end here, we have Amplitude, which is my favorite analytics tool. Now, the reason why this is so important is because Salesforce is able to pump data back into Autopilot, then back into Segment, and Segment can actually pump that data all the way downstream to Amplitude. Now, Amplitude is one of the best analytics tools. We'll talk about it later, but you'll notice how this data pipeline works. Each tool is integrated to be able to pass the data downstream to our ultimate analytics tool, which measures every single thing that we do inside of the organization. Now, we definitely have Zapier included in here. It is a little bit siloed compared to the rest of the world, but this is mainly because Zapier just powers all the crazy hacky stuff that most organizations want to do. Now, let's talk about these tools independently just to give you a better idea. If you're not familiar with Google Tag Manager, it's simply a JavaScript that you would add to your website so you can add other tags to your website without bugging your developers. Now, the reason why I make sure that I say JavaScript is because this is known as a tool which is on the client side, basically what we see on the browser, right? So when you go to a website and what you look at, that is always going to be considered the client side. The server side would be what's happening on the server, right? So other information is over there. Now, tag managers are on the client side and enable it so I can write JavaScript inside the tag manager, which then integrates with the rest of my tools, making it so I can now do development without ever having to bug one of my engineers to make a change on the website. Now, don't get me wrong. You may need to get somebody who knows a little bit of JavaScript to be able to help you write some of the tagging, but that's much, much, much easier compared to getting an engineer to deploy something onto your websites and having to bug them every single time you need to add a tag. Tag Manager makes this much, much easier and simpler to do. Now, just like I talked about Tag Manager, I want to talk about Segment. Now, some people get Tag Manager from Google Tag Manager and Segment confused in the fact that they basically both pump data onto your website without having to bug a developer. Now, the primary difference is that Segment is what we would call a data piping tool, in the fact that, once again, it works on the client side of your website, but it also works on the server side of your website. But where it really comes into play is that we can integrate multiple services with it and be able to make it so that we only have to write one line of code on our website compared to 15 lines of code. Now, let me help better explain this. As you can see in this image, we have Google Analytics, we have Marketo, MailChimp, Kissmetrics, Intercom, Optimizely, and AdRoll. Now, all of these tools have their own JavaScript you need to add to their website. They also all come with their own language that you have to write in, also known as syntax, to be able to make them work. So when I want an event to fire into Kissmetrics, I have to write km.push and then track. When I want to send something into Marketo, I write mkt.track equals push. And this is going to send different pieces of information to either one of these tools. Now, what Segment did is they basically said, you know what, that's a broken model. All you have to do is write in analytics.js, which is their JavaScript, and basically write analytics.track. And when you send that data to us, we will translate that into Kissmetrics. We'll translate that into Marketo. We'll translate that into Intercom. So instead of having to build out an individual integration for all 8 of these tools, I build out one integration, and now I can simply just put on a toggle, and I can turn tools on, and I can turn tools off. And they have over 300 integrations. Now, every single client I work with signs up for Segment and gets this tool going because it saves you hundreds of thousands of dollars on engineering time. Instead of having to write code 16 times whenever you need to make an update, you just write it once and it works with all of your tools. It's literally magic. Now let's keep moving forward because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Now, Clearbit is a fantastic tool. It directly integrates into Segment, which is really, really cool. So if anybody comes to your website and fills out a simple form, obviously, you pass that information into Segment, and Segment will pass that into other tools for you. Now, the cool part is the moment that form field is filled out, the information is also sent to Clearbit. And as a data enrichment provider, once they see an email, they can provide you things like the first name, the last name, the company they work at. Is that company funded? How much money have they raised? All the way to the fact of what technologies are they using on their website. So once that data comes into Clearbit, within 1 second, they send it back into Segment, which then makes it available in all of my downstream tools. This is a game changer when it comes to doing actual lead management. Instead of having to ask somebody 26 questions to become a lead, what I do is I ask them for their email. Clearbit gives me all the information back. I pipe that into all of my tools. And now my sales team and marketing team can better market to these people and better sell to these people because they have all the data they need. Now, obviously, there's a lot of data in there. You can use this for prospecting, the firmographic data about their business, demographic, knowing whether somebody's male, female, where they live, and also you can get technographic, like I said. So do they have Google Analytics on their website? Maybe they're using Conversa on their website. I can identify all of this without having to do anything. Clearbit just enriches it. When I enter my email into Clearbit, this is the bio they give back. I'm the CMO at Effin Amazing. My role is a marketing executive. I live in Orlando, Florida, and the current time where I was at is 1426. So really, really powerful stuff. Now, let's keep going. So Clearbit does some great enrichment, which passes into Autopilot through Segment, which is great. Now, Autopilot is a newer marketing automation tool on the market that is extremely, extremely powerful. But it also is very, very easy to use in the fact that it has a visual editor. So instead of you having to build out all these logic tables and drop downs and checkboxes, you can actually build out a journey which you can visually see and understand what happens. So as an example, this is adding a user to the list, and then these are all the different actions that would happen during that nurture sequence. Now, their tool is so amazing that I do the craziest things in the world. People signed up for one of my webinars that I'm having in a week from now. I was able to send them a text message and then ask them, hey, would you like a reminder? Just reply yes or no, and we'll send you a reminder before the webinar. They have a text bot, which enables me to ask questions and reply back to people's answers, which is super, super rad. Now, not only does it do cool things with text messaging, it also has a lot of great functionality with email automation and as well as postcard automation. Now, for all of you out there that's still doing AdWords and thinking you're hot shit, I have to say this. It's direct mail, which is the cheap option to get people's attention. You're going to spend $20, $30, $100 on AdWords to get a conversion. With direct mail, I'm going to spend $5 or $10 because I'm able to make sure that that postcard goes to the address. And without a doubt, that postcard is going to be put on that person's desk. And it's only going to cost me $1.25 to get that there and in front of their face. And what do you think they're going to see first? Your Google ad or the postcard that you sent? Probably the postcard that's sitting on their desk. So some really, really powerful stuff. And they have integrations with everybody, which enables us to do some really, really rad stuff. Not to mention they have pop-ups which we can automate through our website and be able to push people farther down the funnel. Now, obviously, if I'm working in an organization and I have a marketing automation tool, I'm probably also using Salesforce. Now, 5 years ago, if you would have came to me as a startup and said, listen, I want to pick a CRM, I would have told you to run away from Salesforce. It's too clunky, it's too big, it's too expensive. But years later, after having using all of the different CRMs in the marketplace, CRM or the Salesforce is seriously the leader. Now, most people don't use it because it's a little clunky. The classic version was really ugly. It was hard to use. But if you haven't seen the new Lightning version, you definitely want to check it out. It is really, really easy to use. They've made it so that the user experience is much better, and salespeople no longer get lost, and it's a lot easier to actually keep things up to date. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. Now, the new UI is not the main reason why I recommend it. It's actually because of the amount of integrations they have. If you were to head over to the App Exchange, there is companies that are making millions of dollars based upon their integration with Salesforce. I definitely want you to understand Salesforce has the largest ecosystem of integrations and applications that will enable you and your sales team to do effing amazing things. Now, that's the main reason why I choose Salesforce, is because I can get any application to integrate with it in a matter of seconds, compared to trying to use something like Pipedrive, which has integrations, but it doesn't have thousands and thousands of them. It only has a couple dozen. Now, obviously, it's going to do your lead tracking, deal tracking, and customer tracking. It's an amazing CRM. Highly, highly recommend it. Now, let's keep going, okay? So we've checked out the CRM, but obviously we need to be able to measure stuff. Now, I used to be the former head of marketing at Kissmetrics, so I know a thing or 50 about analytics. Trust me, it's the backbone of my business and as well as the thing that I nerd out on. Now, Amplitude worked for 2 years to try to get me to pay attention to their platform. And one day we had a problem with a client's tool. They were integrated with Amplitude, and Amplitude service actually automatically cleaned up all the data, where elsewhere, when we were looking at Mixpanel or Kissmetrics, the data was completely corrupt. So Amplitude, out of the box, is by far one of my favorite analytics tools. Now, some of the cool things about it is they bring data science and artificial intelligence right to your doorstep. Instead of focusing on how do I figure out what action a user takes is indicative of basically retention, they have a tool called Compass that I can basically just log into, look at, and see that what people do are going to increase my conversions or increase my retention. And it tells you whether it's highly predictive that that action is going to happen. And I didn't even have to do any digging. All I had to do was open up the tool, and it pushed out and told me, hey, listen, people who join the community are more likely to retain than people who don't. So we probably want to get those people into our community and do that event. Now, another thing that's really cool about it is Amplitude is the only analytics tool on the market that does what's known as account-based marketing analytics. Now, what I mean by that is every analytics tool is tracking on a per user basis. So you have a user, you track them through the site. Amplitude can actually track a whole organization of people as well as track those individual users, which is a game changer for me from an analytics perspective. They also do dashboards, they have a free product, and they have real-time analytics, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. Now, if you're not familiar with Zapier, you've been living under a rock. Some people call it Zapier, some people call it Zapier. I prefer to call it Zapier because I'm zapping shit around and I'm getting the job done. Now, they have over 300 different integrations to enable us to do all kinds of cool stuff. But if you start using it, you can really automate all kinds of things. I even automate my calendar so that my Zoom link will populate right into my calendar any single time I have a meeting. Now, you can do this to also zap things over to your analytics tool. You can zap phone calls to people, all kinds of cool stuff. Now, the last tool I want to talk about is Conversa. Now, why do I love Conversa? Now, this has to do with the fact that they have dynamic call numbers, which I can add to my website. For the longest time, and I'll review this with one of our clients later in this call, basically, when somebody would come to our website and make a phone call in, we didn't know where they came from. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on Google AdWords, thousands of dollars on Facebook, and all of that revenue that we're getting from it isn't being attributed to that campaign because we have no idea who they were. But with Conversa, we can actually understand what person it is that clicked on the ad and then eventually called in and came to our site. It's really, really simple, right? You have a customer, they go to your website, you have your advertising number up there, they call on that number, it goes through Conversa, and then it actually rings your business, but it's able to store where that person came from and tell you that that was from a Google ad or a Facebook ad or even organic search, which is extremely valuable knowledge since you want to make sure that people are calling your business and you want to understand where those people come from. So now what, right? Having these tools is great, but putting them to use is another thing. So let's review some examples of how we have used the Ultimate Stack to really push our businesses and our clients forward. Now, I want to introduce you to a company called RealThread. RealThread is a t-shirt printing company based here in Orlando. They do a lot of big printing for companies, everyone like Amazon, to Code School, to Catalyst, Palantir, Envision. Tons and tons of cool companies print through them, but they're most well known for fashion companies. A lot of apparel companies have their shirts printed through them. RealThread's been a client of ours for a long time, and we built out the ultimate stack with them, and they're totally killing it in their marketplace now. Now, when we started with them, our main goal was to increase net new customers. They hired us and said, listen, we want to put money in the bank. We already do well with our current customers, and we need net new. So we said, all right, well, that makes a lot of sense. We're going to do 3 things to make that happen. First, we're going to create a lead scoring model for us to help identify good leads. 2, we're going to create personalized journeys to those people so that way we can talk to them on a one-to-one basis compared to just spamming them with content they don't care about. And last, we're going to improve your reporting so that way we can actually understand what is working and what is not. When we started with there was a lack of visibility and understanding of what was going on. Now, they had a few big problems though. The fact that their site is multi-dimensional is very, very hard. They get orders from a lot of different places. You can go to their website. You can actually build out an entire shirt. You can pick the colors. You can add your logos. You don't even have to talk to a person. You can literally fill out all the information you need, submit an order online, never talk to anybody, click an approval button later, and your order is completely submitted online. Now, for these online users, I have great tracking. I don't have to worry about much. I can track what they're doing on the website. However, we don't only get people from online orders. We also have a lot of people who come in from offline. People will go to the website, they start clicking around, they may try to click to call us, they may try to go to our contact page and email us, which is still considered offline in my perspective, and then as well as obviously they can use our live chat system, which is hosted somewhere else. But it's that damn phone call that gets us into a lot of trouble because we're not able to connect the person from where they came from to that actual call. But with cool tools, we can definitely do that. Now, another problem we have is we get a lot of inbound leads. One great thing about RealThread is they did a lot of SEO work, and they were able to build out all of these t-shirt kits for people to come download. So I come to the website, I fill out the information, I download a pretty t-shirt, and I'm basically a lead inside the system. Except for the only problem was these leads weren't connected in any other tool. They simply lived in Envision. They didn't live in any other tools. Now, this got complicated because we couldn't see the full customer journey. Now, the last problem was they were doing a crap ton of outbound prospecting. 300 new leads a week are being prospected from the internet and then being emailed using SalesLoft. Now, why is this a problem? Well, SalesLoft has all of these leads in it. We're emailing them. Those people then come back to the website. They sign up for a lead gen form, which isn't connected to SalesLoft. So now we have marketing people that are emailing them the newsletter that are totally not connected to the outbound prospecting that we're doing. So these people have submitted an order on the website, and then they're still getting our outbound sequences through SalesLoft because we have no idea in SalesLoft that they completed an order. Now, when customers are tracked in silos, we have no visibility into the customer journey. And that was the biggest problem. You have a user that comes to the website, they fill out a lead gen form. However, they could be from an outbound campaign. You have a user that submits an order on the site and then, of course, calls in. We don't know that that's the same person. We lacked visibility into anything that was going on. Now, when we started working with RealThread, they already had some of our favorite tools. They had Segment set up, which we were really, really excited about. They had Salesforce set up. However, Salesforce wasn't connected to anything. So they would do their outbound prospecting in SalesLoft. None of that data would make it to Salesforce. So we never had an idea of what was really happening. Segment, Intercom, and Kissmetrics weren't connected to Salesforce either. So if you were doing an outbound and somebody clicked on that email, came to the website, I would track you on the website. If you made an order, though, I'm lucky I could connect that data over to what was actually happening in Salesforce. So I had no idea where the customer was in their journey, and we had a lot of bad emails going to the wrong people. So we had to do something to fix that. So we rolled out the ultimate stack. Now, their stack has changed a lot. We do a lot with Clearbit now. We're able to enrich our leads and create personalization, which I'll talk more about later. We also added Conversa, which enables us to be able to actually do call tracking. Now we have somebody come from a Google ad. We can attribute it to that Google ad. We also connected SalesLoft to inject all of its leads into Salesforce. Made a bi-directional sync from Salesforce to Autopilot. We replaced Intercom as our marketing automation tool. And this made it so that if somebody was being outbound prospected and they were sent an email, but however, they visited the site and downloaded a resource and then submitted an order, we could make it so that that SalesLoft email cadence would turn off and make the person aware, hey, they submitted an order online. You should probably talk to them on a one-to-one basis. Now, the really, really great, powerful thing that we were able to also do is make sure that all of this data wound up into their 2 analytics tools. They were currently using Kissmetrics. We didn't want to get rid of it because it has the historical data and a bunch of cool reports, but we did add Amplitude on top of it so that way we could run some more better data and be able to track different things throughout their funnel. So definitely something that is extremely powerful for them to use. Now let's get back to what our goals were, right? The first one that we had to do was basically create a lead scoring model. Now we needed to turn their thousands of leads a month basically into MQLs, marketing qualified leads. You get all these people filling out these lead gen forms. Well, we need to make money off those people. Now, in our opinion, the best way to do a lead scoring model is based upon behavior and as well as the person identity attributes. So if somebody does an action on the site, like downloading a resource, visit our shirt builder, viewed a product, maybe even entered the t-shirt contest or saved an order, this type of behavior should increase our lead score dramatically. Now, we also take into consideration the identity attributes, as we would say, about that person. So their title, is it a VP, director, designer? Give it plus 20. Is their employee range a big company, 500 plus? Give them more points. By taking these 2 things, we're able to create a really, really good lead score. Now, how did we get that behavior data to work anyways, right? How do I know that they downloaded that resource? Well, I used Tag Manager. We set up Tag Manager on the site, and we started tagging the site for the actions that people took. These are called events. We implemented the events. When somebody did something, we could track that. And on the left side of your screen, you'll see I'm doing actions on the website. On the right-hand side, though, this is the live view of data coming in through segment. Now, don't try to read the words. This is just used for example purposes, but you'll notice as I go through the site and do different actions, you'll notice that on the right-hand side in segment, that actual little table keeps moving down because it's tracking my behavior. So by using Tag Manager, I was able to get one of my marketers to drop some JavaScript onto the website, and now I'm able to track the actual actions the users take in segment. Now you're obviously going to ask, well, once it's in segment, who cares, right? Well, as we talked about earlier, segment is a data piping tool. So whatever I send into segment is also going to be sent over to my other tools. Now we're tracking the behavior attributes automatically because we of course are using it. But with segment and Clearbit set up together, you'll notice as I fill out this lead gen form, I'm able to get the resource that I had requested. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that enrichment was, of course, being tracked. But the big important part is that when that action actually happens, I then get a long list of attributes about that user, which I can use in my other tools. Now, obviously, the text is really small. I don't expect you to really be able to read it. But what we'll notice is that, of course, this is a lot of information that came in. Now, once that data comes in, I'm able to pass it into all of my other tools. So now that I have that enrichment data, it's in my Autopilot account, it's in my Amplitude account, it's in my Salesforce account. My marketing people and my salespeople are now able to take all of this useful information from their behaviors and as well as their identity attributes. And then we have a score automatically created for us inside of Salesforce and as well as inside of Autopilot, based upon the actions that they took and based upon the identity attributes that we knew about that person. Now, this isn't very, very hard to do, but it's also a little complicated. So let's just run through really, really quickly how we have to set this up. Now, for a high definition version of this webinar, I will be sending out the recording after this, so please check this out. It will be easier to see. But what we have to do is create a custom field first inside of Salesforce to be able to put that lead score in. So you want to go over to Salesforce, create a number field for you to be able to put a lead score in there. And you're going to want to make it so that that lead score can be seen on the lead record basically by your salespeople. We need them to be able to actually see the lead score, so we obviously can do something about it. Now, creating this in Salesforce is really, really simple. Just create a new custom field and get it going, get it laid out on the page, and you'll have a good time. Now, the next thing that you need to do once you've created that lead field is you actually need to then go over to Autopilot and map that field. Now, Autopilot is a marketing automation tool, like I said earlier. It connects directly to Salesforce and has a bi-directional sync. It's a one-to-one match. Now, what you're going to want to do is go find that new lead score field that you created from Salesforce, and then also map it to a new lead score field that you need to create in Autopilot. This way, you have a place to update the lead score that's bi-directionally synced between the two systems. Now, once you've created that, you can build what's known as an operational journey in Autopilot to do that lead scoring. So basically what we do is we say, hey, listen, if this person's a VP, increase their score by 20, okay? Now, if this person is something else, I can also increase or decrease their score, but I'm going to want to make sure that I update that lead score value every time I see one of those things. Now, this lead score power is helping me a lot. but I'm only right now looking at the identity attributes, right? They're a VP of marketing, increased the score by 20. But earlier we talked about that behavior attribute, right? Now, the cool thing is that segment, which I set up earlier, right? We saw all that data coming through, is also integrated into Autopilot. And I can basically say, whenever this event happens, which is download a resource, I want you to increase their score by 10 as well. So instead of just looking at like, hey, is Joe a VP of marketing? I can also say, hey, what did Joe do on the website? And are those actions important to us? And if they are, let's increase the score by 10 so I can get a lead score going and be able to find which users are engaged and which ones are not. Now, this obviously, it all pumps into Salesforce, right? And we'll notice that we do have basically all these different lead scores for these users. Now, at 150-point lead score, a task is sent to the sales rep. They're made aware that we have an engaged user and they need to talk to them. If something gets to like 500 points, basically it's going to scream at the sales rep and get their attention. Now, this is my record inside of their Salesforce instance. I have a lead score of 120 points, which is good. I have not hit that 150, so a task hasn't been sent to everybody else. Now, the cool thing about the lead score function in Autopilot is I can also use it to increment other fields. So if I wanted to, every time somebody views a product or any time that somebody has viewed a quote, I can increase that by 1 so I understand what that customer is actually doing. So a lot of really, really cool, powerful stuff that we can do with lead scoring and Autopilot, all linked together with Salesforce and Segment. Now, I've shown you how we did some lead scoring, and the lead scoring has been great. From an acquisition perspective, 10% of the people that we lead score as a good lead go on to purchase, which is a great conversion rate. And we're continuously optimizing that lead score. Now, our next goal was to make it so that when we identified who these people were and who was an engaged user from a lead scoring perspective, we wanted to have some automation that reached out to them in a very, very personal way. So we needed to create a personalized journey that turned those hundreds of leads per month into sales qualified leads, right? First job, create MQLs. Now I'm moving on to create SQLs. Now, to do this, we used a tool first called Real-Time Board. This isn't part of the stack, just a super dope tool that everybody should be using. But we basically drew out the entire workflow before we ever once started building. We wanted to make sure that we had the proper planning before we went out and did a bunch of crap, right? We want to make sure that we do Effin Amazing work around here. Now, how does this work, right? So basically what happens is when we want to understand better who a customer is, we need to learn things about them. Now, Clearbit enriches a lot of data. However, it's only got about a 30% match rate. So 30% of the people that give us their email will be able to find out more information. Well, for us, that's not enough. So what we did was anytime you give us your email, we created a welcome email that sends off and thanks you for joining our email list. But it also asks you, hey, what best describes your role? Now, by having people self-identify who they are, we can progressively profile them and add more information. Now, if somebody clicks on this link, it has a UTM, a simple piece of code you add to the end of the URL. When they click on that link, they'll come back to our website. It has the UTM in it. Basically enables us to see when in Google Analytics these roles as well. But we've set up a journey inside of Autopilot that's also looking for those same exact UTMs. So when somebody clicks on that email, they visit a page on our website, it's basically going to say, okay, well, did this person come to the website with a UTM that says apparel owner? Did this person come saying that they were an owner of a company? We're able to set up a journey so anytime that page is visited with those UTMs, we actually add that information to that person's profile, not only in Autopilot, but also in Salesforce, since there's a bi-directional sync. This makes it so that instead of sending people content they don't care about, I can actually segment out my apparel company owners from my designers, and I can segment out my graphic designers from my operational people. And this way I can send them content that they actually care about. Now, let me show you how this would work, right? Let's say that you wanted to download the lookbook from RealThread. You go to their website, you fill out your information, you put in this lead gen form, and you basically hit submit. Well, you're going to go get your lead gen form. You're going to get your download, but you're also going to get this lovely email that says, hey, what are you? Like, are you a designer? Are you a fashion designer? Are you a marketer? What's going on? Whoops, sorry about that. Now, you'll also notice that as soon as I did that process, I'm going to show that video again really quickly just so to make sure that we can see it. As soon as I did that process, it took us back to the website, and it actually thanked us for filling out all of that information, which is really, really nice to be able to see. Now, I'll show it again just to make sure everybody sees it. But as soon as you go to the website, you click on one of those links, the website is going to thank you and basically say, hey, thanks for telling us who you are. We want to make sure that we create the best experience possible. Now, why does this matter? Well, it's because we actually tailor our emails to send to those segments. Because as a graphic designer, I want to see things that I care about. I don't care about the P&L at the end of the day if I'm a graphic designer. I want to understand, how do I make better product descriptions? But if I am a designer at an apparel company, my actual tastes are different than a graphic designer, right? So how would I potentially price my stuff as an apparel designer? But if I'm a business owner, I care about other things, right? How do I get my t-shirts on a budget? So we want to make sure that we create those personalized journeys so we can speak to these users one-on-one. And this is really how we make the most money from our clients, is when we try to create that one-to-one connection with them. Now, I've shown you how to do lead scoring. I've shown you how to do some personalized journeys. Let's talk about the reporting. Reporting is really, really important. Most companies overlook this. They think reporting is the last thing. But for us, this is the first thing that we set up. If you can't measure, you can't manage. And you have to be able to manage if you want to be in a successful business. Now, we needed to create an analytics integration that would be able to give the leadership team better understanding of what their customers were doing. Now, let's go back to what we had learned just a second ago, right? We send them that welcome email. They click a link on that email. It has some UTMs on it. It's going to pass that information into Autopilot, which we then sync with Salesforce. So now I know this is an apparel owner. But because Autopilot has an integration with Segment, I can actually send an event, an action from from Autopilot into Segment, which then makes it appear in the rest of our tools. So as an example earlier, we talked about, we now know this is an apparel designer. Well, when this person answers that question, I also want to know this information in other tools, such as my analytics tool. So if I jumped over to Amplitude really, really quickly, I can look for the event that they answered the survey, and then I can also see a breakdown of all of my users that have answered that survey. Now I can look at event totals, or I can look at uniques, but I can now understand how many people have answered the survey, what do they actually answered in that survey, and then I can also use this same exact data to actually see which one of these segments is converting at a higher rate. Now, this is an entire closed loop system, which you're not going to see anywhere else. If you can find me one company doing this type of stuff, I want to meet them and I want to hang out, because that guy needs to be bought a beer. Now, we do some rad stuff. Now, obviously, I pass that data from Autopilot to Segment, then into Amplitude. But because I passed it through Segment, that same data can also flow over to Kissmetrics without any extra work. So if I went over to Kissmetrics, my other analytics platform, once again, I can say, hey, what role of people have entered the free contest? There's a free contest that you can enter to win 36 shirts on their website. Which roles actually enter that contest? Who's actually interested in this? I can look at different dates, and basically without doing much effort, I can log in and quickly see that there's 138 people that entered the free contest, but I can then segment by the actual role that they chose. And we could see apparel company owners, they're definitely coming to the site more and entering that contest. Meanwhile, HR, which is the one that only had one person, that type of person is not that interested in winning the free shirts, or we're just not getting that much traffic from them. So this data is now pumping through all of my tools. And as you can see, I can now use that as a way to segment based upon other actions people are doing. Now, I understand we accomplished a lot, right? We did some lead scoring, we got our personalized journey, we improved our reporting. But I want to show you one last trick which blows everybody's mind. And this is a bonus. Basically, what happens in most organizations is when something happens in Salesforce, it happens in Salesforce, and Salesforce is the only one that knows about it. And I think that's broken. And the reason why is because I'm doing all of this work to drive traffic to the site and read it in Google Analytics, read it in Amplitude, read it in Kissmetrics. But once I send that lead into Salesforce and that account executive picks it up, I have no idea that they changed the lead status. I have no idea that they created an opportunity. I have no idea that they did anything. For all I know, that lead is dead. And then when I even go and look back and say, hey, listen, we created 300 SQLs, because that's only in Salesforce, I can't connect that back to their originating channel. Where did they actually come from? Now, with the way that we do our stacks in the Ultimate Stack, we can see that information, because as somebody actually goes through the funnel, we can actually see what's happening in Salesforce through Autopilot. So if you change a lead state or lead status in Salesforce, I have a journey in Autopilot that looks for that and then sends an event into Segment, which then of course sends it into the rest of my tools. So if I was to look at it this way, right? Somebody came to our site, they viewed a product, they viewed all the stuff, they then of course viewed a product color, but they maybe didn't purchase, right? I can then see and look inside of my analytics tool to see, hey, did that person ever become a qualified lead? And I can actually see the entire funnel down to the status inside of Salesforce to see that, hey, listen, we're getting thousands of people come to the site, they view the product, they view the color, However, we might be tracking these people offline, right? They picked up the phone, they called in. Well, I can actually see that somebody marked them as qualified in Salesforce and actually pick that lead up back in my analytics tool. Now, if you can find me a company doing this, I definitely want to hang out with them, right? Not kidding. This is some rad stuff, really, really game changer stuff when you look at your business and you care about data. Now, here's my advice. Your stack is only as good as the people that you hire to use it. So don't be stupid, do cool shit. You want to make sure that you can provide a great customer experience to everybody that comes to your website. And usually where that goes wrong is when you have a bad marketing stack. So make sure that you have good people running a good stack at your company. Now, as a takeaway for this, we are in the process of finalizing the Ultimate Marketing Stack book right now. This will be launching really, really soon, and I have some beta copies I'd love to give away. So if you want one, go to your inbox, type dan@effinamazing.com, put in the subject line, request of the book, and what I'll do is I'll send you over one of the early access one, a digital copy, so that way you can actually read it and learn more about how we actually set up this marketing stack. The book goes more in depth than what I'm doing today, so definitely want to make sure that you check that book out and you get everything that you want to have access to. Now, I'd love to answer any questions you may have. This has been a fantastic talk. I've had a great time. I hope it's been good for you, but I'd love to turn it over and make sure that I can answer any questions.
Dan, this has been great. Just what I expected to hear, and I'm going to wait for some questions to roll in. I know there was one question early on about the slides, not just the playback of the video. Are you planning to make these slides available?
Absolutely, and I'll make sure that you have a good copy of the slides as well, Jim, and you'll be able to send that out.
So everyone, once I have those and we have the recording posted, I'll be sending out an email to everyone, and it'll have a link to the recording as well as the slides.
Absolutely.
So we're waiting for questions at this point, Dan. I know we still have everybody still on here, and I think they're trying to digest what they've heard and try to figure out where that fits with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of information in a short period of time. So I definitely know it's sometimes hard to take in, but we want to make sure that we can deliver as much value as possible.
Now, one thing that really caught my interest, and I know this is where I've been kind of stuck, is having the vision to make the plan to the detail that you did. Because I know as we move forward on any activity that we're trying to implement, we always have bumps along the road where we weren't quite prepared. We didn't anticipate very well, but that plan, from what I could see, looked very well thought out. Do you have any kind of a template or a recommended list? Is that in the book goes into detail about how to create that type of a plan?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So definitely when you're looking at the tools, you want to basically build out a tool matrix. I mean, a simple spreadsheet, seeing whether these things are going to be helpful. We don't go too much into like tool selection process or wireframing of the stack as much in the book, but it's definitely something we should look at adding. I will say one thing that we spend a lot of time with before ever integrating the stack is actually reviewing the tools and make sure that they can all work together. And that definitely is a big part of it, but definitely something that I may have missed in the book so far, but definitely something we should look at adding. But I'll go back to what we did in the real-time board for that marketing automation journey. That's the same exact tool that we use when we design a stack. Because ultimately, you want to know where is the data going to flow? Where does it start? Where does it go? How does it get transformed? What is actually happening? So I do recommend to use a simple tool like a real-time board or even a lucid chart to be able to basically wire diagram how things are going to work before you ever really get all this stuff baked in. Because once you're integrating, it's expensive.
Now, is that typically a collaborative effort or just like one person sitting down thinking it through?
No, it depends on how large the company is, of course, but a lot of times it's multiple departments because especially when we work with a company on a stack, right, it affects the sales team, the marketing team, the customer success team, even the leadership team. So you do want to make sure that you do have all the right stakeholders involved. It's not just about one department when you're building out stack. A stack affects everybody. And the analytics tools that we use are really, really important. So we have to make sure that the data in there is going to help everybody in the organization, not just marketing.
Still waiting for questions to come in from everyone.
No worries.
Yeah. You know, I know For smaller companies, a stack like you described can, it's not only from a amount of time to get everything in place, but just a cost standpoint can seem very daunting. What are your thoughts and advice in that regards to that?
No, and that's a great point. I mean, I definitely would say that some of the tools are more cost prohibitive. Like Salesforce for sure is something that is more expensive. I mean, I pay $150 per month per user, but at the same time, it's extremely valuable for my organization. But tools like Google Tag Manager are completely free. Amplitude has a free version as well, which is really helpful. I wish Segment had something for free, but they are definitely a more expensive tool. But when you look at the long haul, it really does save you a lot of money on labor. And that's one of the great benefits of Segment is you only do one integration compared to 16. If you have to do the 16 integrations, it's going to take 16 times more time. So something that would potentially, you have to do an integration with one tool would take 2 days. Well, now you have to multiply that by 16. So now you're looking at what, 32 days? So if you compare that cost back to how much you pay for Segment, Segment is actually pretty cheap. So definitely depends on that stuff. But we definitely know a lot of free alternatives to different tools out there. As I said, Tag Manager's free. Clearbit's as cheap as $100 a month. Mainly recommend that tool, though, if you're in like the business space, B2B or tech. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of free tools out there. The hardship is that some of those free tools disappear. And that's actually what started all of this is we had a tool that basically went out of business. They gave us 30 days notice that their tool was going to be turned off, but they were pretty baked into our stack at that point. And we had to basically drop everything we're doing, push off other marketing campaigns to get that stuff done because now we have to replace this tool. So it was very, very unfortunate.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I'm just thinking that through. A lot of effort to get it in place to have to say goodbye to it at some point.
Yeah, and that's one
Oh, go
reason
ahead.
I'm choosing tools. No, you're good.
Uh, restate the subject line for that beta copy of the book. Someone's asking for that.
Oh, you can just put requesting access to the book. Anything, I'll be able to see the email and stuff like that, and I'll respond personally back to you. Just Dan at Effin Amazing. I'm the guy who's responsible for all the things here. I mean, we have a big team and everything like that, but I'm still responsible for making sure some of these cool things happen.
And I can attest to that. I was, when I originally made contact with Dan, I couldn't find a good direct phone number, email, and I just went onto their contact us page, and Dan responded. So he's watching, and he'll be able to get a response to you. So
Well, I'll give you a good example, right, of how we work, right? We track every action people do on our website. So for an example, I have an automated system that helps me dial people the moment they visit our services pages or our contact page. So a lot of people, if they've downloaded a resource through Clearbit and other tools, I'm able to get their phone numbers. And as soon as you hit the contact page or the services page, you can get a phone call sometimes from me within 5 minutes or even while you're looking at that page. And that really, really gets people's attention because they're already thinking about you. They're already looking at your site. The fact that they just all of a sudden get a phone call from you is very timely. And we're able to do those types of things by leveraging Autopilot and Segment. So I want everybody here to go fill out a lead gen form on my website, put in your mobile number. You're probably going to get a phone call or a text from me if you visit the services pages, unless you're not lead scored high enough. You obviously have to be in an organization that's big enough to work with us for me to invest the time. But once again, that lead scoring model that we've built is what enables me to do that and understand what's actually happening.
great, very good. And I was thinking a question, and you might have answered it, and maybe that's why it left. But it had to do with the the fall off time from when someone fills out a form or whatever they do to make contact. The more time that goes by, the less likely they are to have a positive response. I mean, we all are aware of that. So being able to contact them directly while they're still engaged, that's got to have maximum turnover conversion capabilities. That's just it's an amazing way to do it, and to have the tools give us that kind of capability, that's very encouraging.
Absolutely. And there's actually a service we use as well. It's called upcall.com. It's basically dialers on an API. So I can integrate it in with Salesforce. As soon as a lead comes in, one of their American-based callers will basically get that in their admin and immediately call them and say whatever script I have predetermined. Costs about $250 a month to $500 a month. But now we're setting that up. So instead of it being me calling these people, I actually have a dialer with a script who's going to call out to that person and then help set me a meeting. And we do that all in next to real time. As soon as that person hits that page, they have that phone number, they make that phone call, and then they set me up an appointment. We really look at how do we maximize the conversions every way we can, and how do we automate and augment our skills so that way we can do more with less.
Now, I know with that type of a reactive response, when I've talked to people about it, we've been discussing it, a lot of times the initial reaction is, ooh, that's freaky, that, it's like they're looking over my shoulder. How much of that do you find as you're contacting these people so immediately, how much negative and how much positive are you witnessing?
Yeah, so we don't get too much negative. I mean, I would definitely have to say you get a good amount of voicemails, right? A lot of people don't answer the phone. Nobody wants to be dialed anymore. There's just so many robocalls out there. You wind up leaving a lot of voicemails and sending emails. But we've never really had anybody be like, oh, that's super creepy. Obviously, there are those people out there, but typically I would say those people aren't looking at my website. But you would definitely... it could catch you off guard. I mean, if you're a small bakery and next thing you know, you're dialing somebody who looked at the cupcakes on your website, right? Like that's a little freaky. But at the same time, I think as Americans, definitely we've been we've gotten used to the fact that like we don't have any privacy, right? There's this, obviously the European Union takes privacy very, very seriously. There's some new things coming out called the Gdpr. And basically what that does is set the rule book on how data can be stored about a user. And if you don't follow the rule book, you can be fined 5% of your yearly revenue. That's a lot of fucking money when you're talking about a company, right?
Wow.
If you don't follow the rules. So like, there's definitely rules that prevent us from doing certain things, but in America, we can really do whatever we want.
Well, when you're in a store, you walk up to the counter, somebody's going to ask you, how may I help you? So it's not really much different from that.
Absolutely, right? I mean, all I'm trying to do is create the best customer experience and service my prospects and service my clients. If they don't want to have a happy customer experience, I can't change that. But that's all my goal is to try to create the best customer experience ever.
Well, Dan, is there anything you want to say in closing? Looks like we're not getting more questions. I think we've really covered a lot of amazing information here today.
No, I thought this has been great, and I have nothing else. I just hope everybody has an opportunity to go check out our site, effinamazing.com. Shoot me an email if you want to get access to that book, and I look forward to chatting with everybody later.
All right, everyone. Thanks for participating today. And once again, once this recording is uploaded and ready to go, you'll be getting an email. It's probably going to be into tomorrow before that's all ready to go, but you'll see an email with the link and also a copy of the slides, so you have that as well. So thanks for being part of this, and we look forward to our next webinar. We'll let you know about that in email. And Dan, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this information with everybody.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you soon, Jim.
All righty. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.